It's the year 2025, but something feels different. The flag outside your house isn't the one you know. Your passport doesn't say Australia or India or Canada. It says British Empire. The voice on the radio is the King of England announcing a new global law, and the news is another rebel group crushed by British forces before they even had a chance to fight back. Welcome to an alternate reality, one where the British Empire rules the world. Is this a utopia or a nightmare? Today, we step inside a world that never was, but very well could have been. Let's begin. How the British Empire became unstoppable. To understand how we ended up in a world where the British Empire never collapsed, we need to go back to the moment everything could have changed. Imagine it's 1945. The world is burning, cities reduced to rubble, economies shattered, entire nations on their knees. World War II has ended, but the so-called greatest empire in history, the British Empire, is gasping for air. Its colonies, once obedient, are now filled with whispers of rebellion. In our timeline, this was the beginning of the end. The empire lost its grip, country after country broke free, and Britain, once the ruler of a quarter of the world, became just another nation. Take Canada, for example, a nation that, in our reality, gained full independence through slow political changes like the Statute of Westminster, 1931, and the Constitution Act, 1982, cutting its final legal ties to Britain. But what if that never happened? What if Britain had ensured that Canada remained forever bound to the empire? Instead of allowing self-governance to evolve, Britain would have orchestrated political takeovers, installed loyal British governors, and suppressed nationalist leaders. Imagine a world where the 1885 Northwest Rebellion, led by Louis Riel, ended not in execution, but in a complete erasure of Canadian resistance. Instead of becoming a martyr, Riel would have been wiped from history, and any push for Canadian self-rule would have been met with an iron fist. Picture a Canada where the national anthem isn't "O Canada," because it never exists. The country's flag is still the Union Jack. The Prime Minister is not elected by Canadians, but hand-picked in London. And Quebec? No separatist movements, no quiet revolution. The French-Canadian identity is systematically erased, replaced with strict British rule. The entire country speaks English, and the dream of an independent Quebec is buried before it ever begins. Instead of becoming a country of its own, Canada remains just another British dominion, a massive, resource-rich extension of the empire, fueling Britain's wealth while never breaking free. And the same fate would have awaited Australia, Africa, and even America. Instead of letting go, Britain would have rebranded itself, not as a dying empire, but as an evolving superpower. And just like that, history changes. The empire never falls. The world belongs to Britain. And that brings us to today, a world where the British Empire never fell. Let's step inside and see what it's really like to live in it. Living under the British Empire in 2025. You wake up to the sound of the national anthem playing on every screen in your house. The voice of the British Governor-General echoes through the streets, a daily broadcast reminding you of your duty to the empire. You check your phone. The Union Jack is everywhere. Your passport is issued by the British Imperial government. Your taxes flow straight to London. Your country's leader is a British-appointed official, not someone your people elected. This is not a history lesson. This is your life in 2025. The world never fractured into independent nations. The sun still never sets on the British Empire. And in this alternate reality, life is not what you think. You see, in this world, freedom is an illusion. The British Empire learned from history. This time, they didn't rely on brute force to maintain power. They built a system so airtight, so psychologically ingrained, that rebellion isn't just difficult, it's unthinkable. Take India. Instead of breaking free in 1947, it remains under British rule, but now it's not called a colony. It's a Commonwealth partner, a fancy term that still means London decides your fate. The government is just a puppet. The economy is structured so that wealth flows out while debts pile up. You can vote, sure, but only for candidates who swear loyalty to the crown. Technology has made this empire even stronger. The British government uses AI-driven surveillance to track every move, monitor conversations, even predict dissent before it happens. Social credit systems are already in place. Step out of line, and suddenly, your bank account is frozen, your travel permissions revoked, your digital existence erased. And the worst part is that most people don't even realize they're trapped, because when control is total, resistance isn't crushed, it's prevented. You don't live for your country, you live for the empire. The hidden truth of this empire. At first glance, everything looks perfect. The world is stable, economies are booming, and crime is at an all-time low. The British Empire stands unchallenged, a symbol of global unity. But look closer, and you'll see the cracks forming beneath the surface. This empire wasn't built on justice, it was built on control. And control always comes at a cost. Take innovation. In our real world, competition between nations fuels progress. The space race between the US and the Soviet Union put a man on the moon. The Cold War forced rapid technological advancements, but in a world dominated by one superpower, there's no race, no urgency, no opposition. Why push the limits of human potential when the empire already owns everything? The British Empire doesn't need progress, it only needs obedience. And then there's culture. Right now, every country has its own unique identity, its own language, traditions, music, and art. But under a single, unchallenged empire, diversity dies. You don't get to be Australian, Canadian, Indian, or whatever country you live in. You are simply a subject of the crown. Your history is rewritten, your language fades, your traditions become a footnote in a British textbook. But perhaps the darkest consequence is the loss of freedom itself. When you live under an empire that spans the entire world, where do you run? In today's world, dissidents escape oppressive governments by fleeing to freer nations. But in this world, there is nowhere left to go. Every inch of the planet is under the empire's watchful eye. Every passport is stamped with the same crest. Every law dictated by the same ruler. Rebellion isn't just dangerous, it's impossible. And so, the people live, not in chains, not in open fear, but in something much worse, a cage so invisible they don't even realize they're trapped. Maybe, just maybe, no empire can rule forever. How it crushes rebellion. The streets are restless. A city once buzzing with life now echoes with whispers of defiance. People vanish overnight, some into prison cells, others into the shadows, too afraid to resist. Yet, the world watches, expecting a revolution. But what they don't realize is that the British Empire has spent centuries perfecting the art of crushing rebellion before it even starts. Revolts don't just get suppressed, they get outmaneuvered. Instead of letting insurgencies grow, the empire uses a three-part strategy: divide, infiltrate, and eliminate. It turns groups against each other, making enemies out of former allies. It embeds spies within resistance movements, feeding misinformation, exposing leaders before they can strike. And when force is necessary, it's swift and absolute. Think about Canada's Red River Rebellion in 1869, a fight for self-determination led by Louis Riel and the Métis people. In our timeline, the British crushed the movement, forced Riel into exile, and later executed him for treason. But in an unbroken British Empire, there would be no exile, no trial, no rebellion. The Métis would have been silenced before they could ever organize. Leaders disappearing, communities divided, British loyalists planted within resistance groups to dismantle them from within. Or take Ireland's Easter Rising of 1916. The Irish rebels sought independence, believing World War I had weakened British control. But the empire responded with brutal efficiency, executing leaders, imprisoning thousands, and imposing martial law. If the empire had never collapsed, Ireland would have never gained independence. Gaelic culture would have been erased, Irish identity diluted, and rebellion itself reduced to a forgotten whisper in history. Even in a modern 2025 scenario, a still dominant British Empire wouldn't just rely on brute force. It would weaponize technology, AI surveillance, media control, cyber warfare to silence dissent before it could ever take root. The age-old empire wouldn't fall behind, it would evolve, ensuring that rebellion is crushed before it even becomes a spark. Because in this world, resistance isn't just futile, it's impossible. Conclusion. Now, take a step back and think. This isn't just about the British Empire, it's about power, about how easily history could have taken a different path. History has a pattern. Empires rise, dominate, and eventually collapse. But power never disappears. It simply shifts hands. The British Empire may have fallen, but the strategies it used to control the world are still very much alive today. Military dominance has evolved into economic warfare. Direct rule has been replaced by political puppetry. Censorship is now enforced through digital surveillance. The world might look different, but the systems of control remain the same. If the British Empire had survived, it wouldn't have been seen as tyranny. It would have been accepted as the natural order of the world. And today, new superpowers follow the same blueprint, just under different names. Empires never truly die. They just change their face. That's all for today. If you have enjoyed this video, do hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this.